Dear students, this is a lecture on specifically chapter 3 of Gulliver's Travels book 1, that is A Voyage to Lilliput. Here I will specifically try to teach you this chapter 3, which is of immense importance so far as the Gulliver's Travels satirical aspect is concerned. In this chapter, you will get the names of certain politically important and influential personalities in disguise, and also you have to keep in mind that Gulliver's Travels is basically a satire on the political, specifically and most importantly on the political aspects of contemporary England that Swift actually experienced at that time. This is also a satire on the culture and on the religious aspects of the society. But here in this chapter, we will have the idea, or we will see how through Gulliver, Swift gives us a very brilliant portrayal of the 18th century England in terms of its political corruption and in terms of its um, political patronage, and and whatever he does, there remains a kind of sense of humor. There is existing a humorous tone, and you will definitely enjoy reading this chapter 3 by besides discovering the political intricacies or the satirical overtone in the text. So let's begin with the text, and as we kind of go through the text, we will see that how Gulliver, through various episodes, actually portrays the political significance, or how he actually satisfies the purpose of the text, that is satire. And you know by the time that the purpose of satire is not only to portray the hypocrisies of the society, but satire has a purpose to rectify the society as well. That is, through this satire, Swift actually tries to rectify the society. And this is again also important to keep in mind that not this particular chapter is, and the book as well, the entire Gulliver's Travels as well, is not only satirizes the individual characters. I mean, the motto of Swift is not satirizing individual characters, but this portrays a sarcastic, kind of cynical picture of the entire mankind. And as I have been time and again saying it in my classes, that this Gulliver's Travels is actually a satire on the idea of enlightenment, on the idea of enlightenment progress. So let's begin with the text. This is chapter 3, as you can find here in the very beginning of the text, a kind of abstract or a kind of summary of the entire chapter as given by the author himself. Now, here the author means Gulliver, because Gulliver is the mouthpiece of Jonathan Swift, and the entire thing is being narrated by Lemuel Gulliver. The author diverts the emperor. So this is the emperor of uh, the Lilliputians. The author diverts means the author diverts the emperor through various entertainments. The author diverts the emperor and his nobility of both sexes in a very uncommon manner. This is very important, that whatever he is doing in an uncommon manner, and this uncommon manners are actually uh, the source of humor, the source of laughter in this chapter. The diversions of the court of Lilliput described, the author has his liberty granted him upon certain conditions. So, as you can find in the highlighted sections, that in this chapter you will see how Gulliver, the author, actually the narrator, he diverts the emperor with uncommon manner, and how as a consequence or as a gift he is given liberty, but this liberty is granted on certain conditions, and these conditions, I mean, are presented in the form of articles as 1, 2, 3, 4 towards the end of this chapter. So, to begin with the chapter, my gentleness and good behavior. This is very important so far as the character of Gulliver is concerned. If you are given to write an answer to the question, write briefly or kind of discuss the character of Gulliver, this section will help you. Gulliver, throughout the first three books, he seems to be a very kind personality, and specifically in chapter 3, since we are discussing this chapter 3, he emerges very gentle, having good behavior. Gulliver, as we have seen in the first two chapters as well, he appears very kind, very sensitive, and very gentle. So the nature of Gulliver is very gullible. That is why he is named as Gulliver. My gentleness and good behavior has gained so far on the emperor and his court, and indeed upon the army and people in general, that I began to conceive hopes of getting my liberty in a short time. So this is because of his nature being gentle and good. He kind of impressed the emperor, he impressed his court, and not only emperor court but the army and the general public as well. And this is because of this particular nature, Gulliver is granted or he began to conceive hopes of getting his liberty. So liberty is very important, and in this chapter Gulliver gains his liberty because he was being chained down, and liberty is very important for an individual. I took all possible methods to cultivate the favorable disposition. So, this is very important to impress or to satisfy the emperor, because without satisfying, without gaining the favor of the emperor, Gulliver, it is quite impossible for Gulliver to gain his liberty. So, he is preparing likewise. The natives came by degree and to be less apprehensive of any danger from me. So this is again very important, that Gulliver, though he is very big in size, or so far as his physicality or his physical appearance is concerned, I mean, in the very first two chapters, you have seen that at one point of time, Gulliver was kind of feeling the urge to dash these small Lilliputians against the ground and kill them. At one point of time, he was kind of feeling this, but Gulliver is a very generous, is a very gentle personality, and the Lilliputians apprehended that this Gulliver will never be or cannot be a source of danger for them. So this was again helpful for Gulliver's gaining liberty. I would sometimes lie down and let 5 or 6 of them dance on my hand. So this is again the source of humor, that he allowed them to dance on his hand. And at last the boys and girls would venture to come and play at hide and seek in my hair. And this is again a kind of a humorous depiction that these boys and girls, they were allowed to play hide and seek in his hair. This is again very humorous, so far a source of laughter so far as the depiction is concerned. But they were obviously the mingling between, or the relationship between Lilliputians and Gulliver is quite clear here, and this is again very important to notice that Gulliver is posing no threat to the Lilliputians. He is being sensible, he is being gentle, he is good. He's in good terms with the Lilliputians. This is important because towards the end of this book we will see that despite all these attempts of Gulliver, he is being victimized by this small Lilliputian. So all his efforts, all his good nature, all this relationship between Gulliver and Lilliputians actually proves to be futile, because towards the end of this book one we will see that Gulliver, even this Lilliputians attempt to blind Gulliver. So this is quite important because Gulliver is trying, Swift through Gulliver is trying to present Lilliputians, though they are small in size, but they are very crude, they are very cruel so far as their nature is concerned. So, Swift through Gulliver presents a very gruesome or a very kind of cruel picture of these Lilliputians. I had now made a good progress in understanding and speaking the language. Again, this is very important that from the very first chapter you have seen Gulliver. He is very keen learner. He is very good in uh, achieving the language of different lands. So Gulliver, by chapter 3, he is quite able to understand and speak in their language. Unless and until Gulliver is able to understand them, is able to speak and understand their language, there cannot be any communication. And without communication, it will be very difficult to go on presenting the rest of the chapter. The emperor had a mind one day to entertain me with several of the court shows, wherein they exceed all nations I have known, both for dexterity and magnificence. So this is again very important, and in this particular section, you will see how Gulliver actually presents the political system of contemporary England. This particular section actually mirrors the political ambience or political atmosphere, or political condition of 18th century England. So the emperor one day he had a mind, that is he wished to entertain Gulliver with several of the courtly shows. So this is one of the courtly shows that Gulliver um witnessed during his stay in Lilliput. Gulliver says that these Lilliputians actually exceed in their dexterity and magnificence. So they are magnificent, and they are very skillful in their presentation of these particular shows. I was diverted with none so much as that of the rope dancers performed upon a slender white thread extended about 2 feet and 12 inches from the ground. This rope dancers episode is most important episode, one of the most important episodes in book 1, because this rope dancers episode mirrors the political corruption, the political situation of contemporary England. How? I will discuss. So, what is this episode? This in this rope dancers episode, a slender white thread is there, and it is extended about 2 feet and 12 inches from the ground. So there's a height and upon which this white thread is extended, and upon which I shall desire liberty with readers' patience to enlarge a little. And now this Gulliver addresses the readers, and he wishes to enlarge depiction, enlarge this rope dancers episode. This diversion is only practiced by those persons who are candidates of great employments and high favor of court. This is again important, that these diversions are only played by the persons who are of great employments, who are serving for the court, that is the king, or who are of high favor in the court. Again, this proves that who are present in the court in during this rope dancers episode are very favorite of the emperor, or they are kind of uh, handling or managing some very important posts in the emperor's office. They are trained in this art, so they are trained, as we have seen that everyone, or the Lilliputians are very skilled, they are very disciplined, they are having mathematical knowledge, and they are having mechanical knowledge as well, and they are very keen, they are very disciplined. In this art form, they are trained from their youth and are not always of noble birth or liberal education. When a great office is vacant, this is again important, who are the performers and why they are performing this rope dancing episode, or this kind of diversion. When a great office is vacant, this is interesting, either by death or disgrace, which often happens. So this is quite often that a particular person can be a target, or can be a victim of emperor's disgrace. So there is a continuous tension or a continuous effort on part of the employees, or on part of the court members to impress the emperor, or to be in favor of the emperor. If you are not in favor of this emperor, you may lose your position. So either by death or disgrace, if there is a vacant position in the great office of the emperor, 5 or 6 of those candidates petition the emperor to entertain his majesty and his court with a dance of the rope, and whoever jumps the highest without falling succeeds in office. So this is the rope dancing episode. What actually happens? You have been, uh, as you notice, that in this is very important. You can underline this particular section in your text. So. When there's a vacancy out of death or disgrace of the existing person, 5 or 6 per candidate apply petition to the emperor, and this is solely on the hands of the monarch, the emperor. He is to decide. And how he decides? He decides upon the way, or he decides upon the rope dancing. If this petitioners, or those who applied for the post, if they they are successfully they're successful in entertaining the emperor, they are given the post, and whoever kind of entertains the emperor most, he gets the position. So everything depends on the political patronage. Everything depends on the goodwill of the emperor. It depends how you impress the emperor. Very often, the chief ministers themselves are commanded to show this skill and to convince the emperor that they have not lost their faculty. Again, not only in case of vacancy but also the chief ministers themselves, they are commanded to show their skill, and they need to prove, they need to convince the emperor that yes, they have this faculty. So there is continuous tension in the court to impress or to kind of be in favor of this emperor. Now this is again important uh, as to show, or as to getting reminded of this fact that in 18th century England, one was, and again this is very true to this time also, that if you are not in this good book of the political leaders, you may suffer. So this is the core nature of politics. This is the bad side of politics which Swift addresses here. Very often the chief ministers themselves, they also need to show their skill. Now, Flimnap, the treasurer, is allowed to cut a caper on the straight rope at least an inch higher than any other lord in the whole empire. So, Flimnap is very important here, because who is Flimnap? Let me show you. This Flimnap Flimnap is the treasurer of Lilliput. He quickly takes against Gulliver, thanks to some totally absurd rumors floating around the court that Gulliver is having an affair with Flimnap's wife, and this you will see that Gulliver is kind of seen to have an affair with this Flimnap's wife. In later we'll see. So Flimnap is Robert Walpole. Who is Robert Walpole? He is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, that is, he is taking the responsibility of the Treasury of England, and he is the head of Whig government from 1715 to 1717, and again from 1721 to 1742, and whose notorious political dexterity is satirized here. Swift actually satirizes the political dexterity of, or the power of Robert Walpole's negotiation, or his political motive, or his politics, the politics of Robert Walpole here in this chapter. Swift disliked both the man and his politics. Uh, so Swift was disgraceful, disliked Flimnap. Flimnap is Robert Walpole. Robert Walpole is the first Prime Minister of England, and he served as a quite influential and important figure during Swift's time, because when George the First was the king, and he couldn't speak English because uh, he could only speak in French. So Flimnap, or Robert Walpole, actually uh, served on behalf of George the First, and he took, obviously, since the king cannot communicate properly with his subjects and with his court persons, Flimnap, the prime minister, had to play an important role, and Walpole did that, and he is very important figure. He cuts a very important role so far as the 18th century politics of England is concerned. And obviously he was in the good book of the emperor, and he took major decisions on behalf of the king. So Flimnap is the treasurer, and he is allowed to cut a caper on the straight rope. So, Flimnap or Robert Walpole, he is seen to perform quite well. He is seen to perform kind of very skillfully in the rope dancing episode. I have seen him do the somerset, that is the somersault, several times together upon a trencher fixed on a rope, which is no thicker than a common pack thread in England. So Walpole is very skilled. Uh, so in performing the diversion, which actually shows or which actually similar to Robert Walpole's political supremacy or political dexterity or political skill. Again, this red highlights show that these are real persons. This fictitious names actually imply or signify real persons of England. So my friend Redressal is again a real person in England. Let me show you who is Redressal. Redressal is probably Lord Carteret, Secretary of State from 1721 until appointed Lord Lieutenant of Ireland in 1742. So he is Lord Carteret, Secretary of State, and later he was appointed as the Lord Lieutenant of Ireland in 1724. And though he was Swift's friend, still he bowed to political necessity and posted a reward of 300 pounds for the discovery of the author of Trappire's letter.